From the News Channel 5 Network, this is OpenLine.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to OpenLine. Glad you are with us tonight. We are going to take a really close look at the January 6th hearings. We're going to play some clips. We certainly want you to call in with your thoughts, and we are going to be getting the expert opinion of Dr. John Weil, political science professor at MTSU. He's joining us via Zoom. But wow, what a remarkable period here. And I know there's some people who are very skeptical about what's going on, and certainly we want to hear from them. We hope they watch, and let's hear from them. But Dr. Weil, there are others that are just shocked. I mean, some of the stuff coming out is just shocking. And I don't know how much people have seen, but today will be a chance. This show will be a chance for you to kind of look back at some of the highlights as we play some clips. And really, we want to get people's opinion. What are your thoughts after the hearings that we've seen so far with one left? What are your thoughts with what you've seen to this point, Dr. Weil?
I'm sort of with you. When it started, I had some skepticism. My fear would be that it would simply be sort of a prosecution rather than an exploration. But I think it's been a fairly good mix of both. I mean, I think what's fascinating about it is how many of the witnesses, many of whom have been fairly unfavorable to Trump and his allies, how many of them were Republicans, and many of them, I think, somewhat reluctant Republicans. Attorney Cipollone, his private counsel or presidential counsel, being among them.
We had, there was a poll taken in Tennessee. Was this a violent insurrection, or was this a legitimate political protest? And there are a lot of Republicans and a lot of people in Tennessee who answered it was legitimate political protest. As you watch this, there's one person, and we'll see this clip. One person says, "I do fear for the next election cycle because who knows what it might bring. If people are willing to do this, in the future, there could be all kinds of problems." And I guess for those that are questioning why do this, is that part of it? I mean, in the future,
yes.
Should this be allowed to happen in the future?
Well, your viewers, in a sense, they're both right. There were certain elements of what happened on January 6th that were completely legitimate. People have a right to listen to a president speak. They even have a right to march on the Capitol. They don't have a right to bring weapons. They don't have a right to break into buildings. It's disgraceful that people who claim to support law and order are willing to fight it out, duke it out for hours with Capitol police officers whose only crime is that they have sworn to try to protect Congress.
Wow, that's true. All right, so we are going to play some clips. I want to start, the first clip we'll play is from the co-chair, the Republican Liz Cheney. This is how she basically opened yesterday's hearing. And we'll play, all of these clips are about 3 minutes long. We'll play this, then we'll come back and talk about it.
And how that decision has changed his life. Today's hearing is our 7th. We have covered significant ground over the past several weeks. And we have also seen a change in how witnesses and lawyers in the Trump orbit approach this committee. Initially, their strategy in some cases appeared to be to deny and delay. Today, there appears to be a general recognition that the committee has established key facts, including that virtually everyone close to President Trump, his Justice Department officials, his White House advisors, his White House counsel, his campaign, all told him the 2020 election was not stolen. This appears to have changed the strategy for defending Donald Trump. Now the argument seems to be that President Trump was manipulated by others outside the administration, that he was persuaded to ignore his closest advisors, and that he was incapable of telling right from wrong. This new strategy is to try to blame only John Eastman or Sidney Powell or Congressman Scott Perry or others, and not President Trump. In this version, the president was, quote, poorly served by these outside advisors. The strategy is to blame people his advisors called, quote, the crazies for what Donald Trump did. This, of course, is nonsense. President Trump is a 76-year-old man. He is not an impressionable child. Just like everyone else in our country, he is responsible for his own actions and his own choices. As our investigation has shown, Donald Trump had access to more detailed and specific information showing that the election was not actually stolen than almost any other American. And he was told this over and over again. No rational or sane man in his position could disregard that information and reach the opposite conclusion. And Donald Trump cannot escape responsibility by being willfully blind. Nor can any argument of any kind excuse President Trump's behavior during the violent attack on January 6th. As you watch our hearing today, I would urge you to
cannot escape responsibility, responsible for his actions, and he knew that there was not evidence of widespread election fraud. What do you think is the goal? When you hear Liz Cheney say that, is she thinking about criminal charges here, in your opinion? What do you think the goal is here?
Well, of course, she doesn't have the ability to bring criminal charges. The committee may or may not be referring this to the Justice Department. They do seem, there was breaking news today, actually, on CBS, that the committee was talking to the Justice Department about the fake elector scheme with possible criminal wrongdoing. But, either horn of the dilemma that you put Trump on, if she's correct, is not a good one. He's either immature, unable to discern, good advice from bad advice, or he wants to win so badly that he's willing to do whatever it takes to do that, even if it's undemocratic. So I suspect, one of her objectives is, as a Republican, I think she wants someone else to be heading the next presidential Republican ticket.
And how, you're a historian, how, has there ever been a former president indicted, criminally charged? How unusual would this be?
The two closest would probably be Andrew Johnson at the, shortly after the Civil War, who was basically unwilling to enforce the new amendments, used very scathing rhetoric about opponents. And then the next one would be Richard Nixon, who, was either ordered at or covered up, or maybe both, a break-in at the national headquarters of the Democratic Party, obviously with a hope of gaining some kind of electoral advantage. But frankly, I think the evidence so far suggests that that Trump's rhetoric actually led to the death of individuals. Including some police officers, either that day or subsequently.
And that would lead to obviously a very serious charge. The other charge they would be talking about would be some form of sedition, I guess. Do you think those things are possible, or what do you think?
I think it is possible. I mean, again, I'm not a lawyer. Actually, I'm a political scientist rather than a historian, although I like to write history a lot. But I think there's a federal statute against interfering with, the legitimate results of elections. And if the committee has in fact established or can establish that Trump pushed ahead with a fraudulent electoral claim, knowing that it was false, then I think that probably is a criminal violation. Now, if you went to a jury, would you always have enough, one or two Trumpers that could, at the very least, could hang the jury? That I don't know.
So it says in there, President Trump knew there was no evidence of widespread election fraud because people close to him told him so on multiple occasions. And yet we see a rise in the number of state officials who don't believe the 2020 election was legitimate. Including, there's a new Secretary of State of Florida. There are many people on ballots all across the country who are saying the election was stolen and was not legitimate. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's quite possible that they are doing what Trump is doing, that they in fact know that there's not, they're doing this to get elected. They're doing this because it stirs up their base, and that they themselves know. I mean, how many opportunities do you get? I think there were like 60 court decisions that challenged states, sometimes multiple times. And as far as I know, there was only one decision that went in Trump's favor, and that was not on the issue of electoral fraud. It was on a side issue of, what law applied or what deadline applied or that sort of thing. But there, if you can't trust the courts, what else do we have?
And even courts that were judges that were appointed by Trump said there was nothing here. And I think that's one thing that has kind of stood out to me as the hearing has progressed, that he was told over and over again, there were people that were telling him there's nothing there, stop doing this. And yet he continued to do it. And so you wonder, and he raised all this money and didn't spend it for recounts and for that kind of thing. You wonder, does he believe what he's saying or not?
Probably not. But, the other interesting thing that's come out of the hearing is that he apparently knew that when he told people to go to the Capitol, he knew that they were failing to come through the mag machines because they had weapons on them that they didn't want confiscated. And, the thought that a president of the United States would send people, armed people that include Proud Boys and the 3 Percenters and, all these other groups to Capitol Hill is just almost unfathomable.
We're going to take a break. Then we're going to come back and hear from riot participants. They testified in that last hearing, and we have some clips. So we'll hear some of that, and we certainly want to hear from anybody who wants to call in. There's the number, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. We'll take a break. Come back with more right after this.